Welcome to the PlayStation Longbox Quest. In this series, I'll attempt to collect, play, and review every game for the original Sony PlayStation released in the Longbox format. So sit back, relapse, and enjoy. In many ways, Total Eclipse Turbo is a landmark game. It's the first PlayStation game released from Crystal Dynamics, a studio that produced dozens of games throughout the 32-bit era. It's among the first PlayStation games to be ported from another console. It's also technically the very first PlayStation game released in North America. Total Eclipse Turbo hit store shelves on August 30th, 1995, almost 2 weeks before the US launch of the PlayStation hardware itself. Total Eclipse was originally released for the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer, a 32-bit console that debuted in 1993. The 3DO had a handful of talented studios in its corner, including Crystal Dynamics, who produced several 3DO games that are widely regarded as being amongst the best for the system. These include Gex, The Horde, and Crash and Burn. Total Eclipse made the jump from 3DO to PlayStation with no major issues, and if nothing else, it's a solid port. While Total Eclipse Turbo is a historically significant release, it's pretty terrible. The game's story is a watered-down mix of Predator and Independence Day, where a race of aliens has sought out Earth's inhabitants as a worthy adversary to hunt down, kill, and consume. So naturally that means you have to take to the skies and engage in some of the most horrendous 3D shooting 1995 had to offer. It's a rail shooter in the vein of Nintendo's Star Fox, where you control a spacecraft that flies through a series of forward-scrolling stages. You're armed with an arsenal of weapons that you can upgrade with power-ups scattered throughout each level. Your energy meter slowly drains throughout each level, and it refills slightly with every enemy you kill. It's up to the player to determine the pacing of the game, and it always feels like you're either going too fast or too slow. Ideally, you'd want to speed through each level using as little energy as possible while picking off whatever enemies you can along the way. The back of the game's case hints at this mechanic with the cheesy tagline, "The more you kill, the better you feel." It's an interesting gameplay dynamic, but in practice this turns out to be pretty frustrating. You end up either losing all of your energy because you're going too slow and you become an easy target for the enemy craft, or you run out of energy because you're going too fast and you end up colliding with the level geometry. There's never any kind of balance to the gameplay, and you never feel like you're in full control of what's going on. The twitchy flight controls don't help, and it's difficult to judge how close you can fly to floors and walls without bouncing off and taking damage. Crystal Dynamics would follow up on Total Eclipse with Off-World Interceptor, another forward-scrolling shooter that puts you behind the wheel of some sort of space buggy instead of a spaceship. We'll cover that one soon enough. While Total Eclipse was never ported to the Sega Saturn, a sequel, Solar Eclipse, was a Saturn exclusive. The series ended there, and Crystal Dynamics shifted its focus away from shooters afterward. Total Eclipse is really only notable for launching alongside the PlayStation and for being a showpiece for the 3DO, and the first of many Crystal Dynamics games for the PlayStation. The studio later produced better-known PS1 games like Legacy of Kain and Akuji the Heartless. Crystal Dynamics even took over the Tomb Raider franchise decades after the release of Total Eclipse Turbo. They really seemed to shine once they got away from the oversaturated market of 3D polygon shooters. Stay tuned for the next episode of PlayStation Longbox Quest. As we edge closer to the North American release of the Sony PlayStation, we'll cover its debut sports game, Power Serve 3D Tennis.